Deputy Speaker, honourable members, this commentator is none other than Dr. Hloppe, the parliamentary leader of MK, also swore an oath to uphold the Constitution when he became a judge. An oath that he regarded with such frivolity that he has become the first judge to be impeached in democratic South Africa for behaviour so odious, so beyond the pale, that he was found guilty of gross misconduct by the Judicial Services Commission. Now, this is the man who is before you all today, a man who swore an oath repeatedly to defend and uphold our Constitution, yet he has now a stated intent to destroy our constitutional democracy. This is the type of political smoke and mirror game that is to be expected, a true homecoming for someone who has always seen himself as a politician, a man who cannot be trusted.
So it was a battle of spears and arrows today in the parliament as Glynnis Breytenbach actually unleashed fury on Dr. Hloppe and his appointment as MK's leader of the opposition in the parliament and also his service on the Judiciary Service Commission. Let's listen to her really poignant speech at the parliament debate on the opening of a parliament address by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And I'll be back for some really interesting analysis based on an article by public lawyers in South Africa on why they criticize the Judicial Service Commission for not probing Dr. Hloppe's appointment.
Madam Deputy Speaker, honourable members, as a matter of legal history, it is broadly accepted that there were two primary evils in the apartheid legal order: parliamentary supremacy and strict legal positivism. Parliamentary supremacy, in simple terms, meant that Parliament could pass laws in an unconstrained manner, and those who applied the law had to give effect to these laws, irrespective of whether they believed it to be right or wrong. In this regard, former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke pointed out that, and I quote, "Under apartheid, Parliament enjoyed supremacy, and no constitutional Bill of Rights provided any fetter on its legislative powers. Oppressive laws passed by Parliament could, for the most part, not be challenged by the courts. The apartheid regime was sustained by a lack of accountability and the construct of parliamentary sovereignty. At the time when the South African Parliament enjoyed parliamentary sovereignty, the Appellate Division and the Judiciary more generally was a weak check on Parliament's powers. Parliament essentially enjoyed a monopoly on power." Close quote. Other academic legal scholars have also analysed the damage caused by the system of parliamentary supremacy and the related tendency for other state organs to simply apply the law. In this regard, one such commentator remarked that it is essential that we should learn to say no to unwarranted parliamentary violations of human rights, and advocated for the establishment of a true human rights culture in our country, arguing forcefully that to achieve this, the rule of law must be strongly supported. Deputy Speaker, honourable members, this commentator is none other than Dr. Hloppe. In a learned article in the South African Law Journal of February 1995, it is the very same Dr. Hloppe who now proclaims that our legal system, the one transformed from an apartheid-enabling system to one founded on the rule of law and human rights, is nothing but a system imposed upon us by our former colonizers, and is, if not the problem, then at least part of the problem in our country. He is, of course, now the leader of the MK party in this House. A cursory reading of the election manifesto of the MK party makes it very clear that they are not constitutionally inclined. Their goal, clearly stated, is to destroy our Constitution. A Constitution painstakingly drafted, lauded internationally, and one that has served us well. MK would replace our constitutional democracy with a government of parliamentary supremacy. Now, we know from our painful history that it is precisely that structure of government that gave rise to apartheid, the passing of racially discriminatory laws, and the causing of untold misery for all South Africans. Yet, upon entering the service of South Africans in this House, all MK MPs, like all other MPs, swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Those who drafted our Constitution did not contemplate a situation where those found wanting, when entrusted with upholding our Constitution, could simply move to another position where the same obligation was to be sworn to. However, the drafters, in their infinite wisdom, gifted us with the safeguard that to break down constitutional supremacy and the rule of law requires the support of at least 75% of the members of this House. They did this because they realized that we needed a definitive break with parliamentary supremacy if our constitutional democracy is to withstand those who try to subvert it. This firewall we will work ceaselessly to protect. The parliamentary leader of MK also swore an oath to uphold the Constitution when he became a judge. An oath that he regarded with such frivolity that he has become the first judge to be impeached in democratic South Africa for behaviour so odious, so beyond the pale, that he was found guilty of gross misconduct by the Judicial Services Commission. Now this is the man who is before you all today, a man who swore an oath repeatedly to defend and uphold our Constitution, yet he has now a stated intent to destroy our constitutional democracy. This is the type of political smoke and mirror game that is to be expected. A true homecoming for someone who has always seen himself as a politician, a man who cannot be trusted. Our Constitution embodies a never again moment. Never again will we allow the rule of men to threaten our democracy, our human rights and our freedom. We will work ceaselessly during this 7th administration, from one debate to the next, to expose those who yearn for the system that enabled personal ambitions to trump the law. I thank you.
And guys, what do you think? There isn't much to say. I watched a previous interview at the time when Dr. Hloppe was appointed for the Judicial Service Commission service, and she was actually in the same way really vociferous in her criticism of the appointment. So we'll keep watching and seeing how probably Dr. John Hloppe might, his position on the JSC might be challenged. I don't know, but we'll keep watching and seeing. But anyway, I found a really interesting report on this issue and try to break down why Dr. John Hlope's appointment might be a problem for the upcoming or next set of judges that might need to be appointed on the Judicial Service Commission in South Africa. So it argues that former Judge Johan Krieger has actually criticized the Judicial Service Commission's decision not to investigate allegations against Cape Judge President John Hloppe as the most significant threat to the rule of law that South Africa has faced since its transition from apartheid. Kriegler, actually speaking in his capacity as the head of Freedom Under Law, so this is actually another really powerful organization, Freedom Under Law. I think they've been the one also, they've been really pushing for, even the VBS loot and the prosecution of those who were involved. But anyway, Kriegler here, speaking in the capacity as the head of the Freedom Under Law, which is an organization dedicated to upholding the rule of law, he highlighted that the forthcoming legal challenge against the Judicial Service Commission's decision had garnered support from prominent Freedom Under Law members, Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Dr. Mamfela Rampele. Kriegler stated that the two not only endorsed his actions, but they also requested that he should publicly convey the gravity of the situation. And the rule of law, actually, he argues, cannot endure if the legitimacy of the judiciary is not safeguarded. But anyway, Kriegler also argued that the Judicial Service Commission's refusal to investigate allegations that Hloppe attempted to sway Constitutional Court judges in a case involving President Jacob Zuma's previous corruption charges was seriously detrimental to the rule of law in South Africa. Kriegler also emphasized that the aim of the legal challenge is not to seek Hloppe's impeachment, but also to compel the Judicial Service Commission to fulfill its responsibilities, describing the Judicial Service Commission's decision as irrational and unreasonable. But anyway, in response, Hloppe stated that, he stated that he was not aware of Kriegler's comments and that he would have refrained from making any remarks had he been informed. Kriegler also criticized the Judicial Service Commission's decision as fundamentally contradictory to established legal procedures for resolving factual disputes. According to the Cape Times, Kriegler highlighted that the Judicial Service Commission acknowledged the existence of a factual conflict between the versions provided by the Constitutional Court judges and those of Hloppe. However, the Judicial Service Commission deemed cross-examination unnecessary, reasoning that parties would adhere to their respective positions. Kriegler therefore further remarked that for centuries it has been a standard practice in law to resolve factual disputes through cross-examination, right? And it's also, according to him, he says that it is perplexing that the Judicial Service Commission would conclude that cross-examination is unnecessary simply because the parties would maintain their positions regardless. Freedom Under Law boss Kriegler also further noted that the Judicial Service Commission decision has already negatively affected the process for appointing new Constitutional Court judges, with one candidate withdrawing his application. He argues that he was approached by 5 candidates and, he managed to persuade 4 of them to proceed with their applications. However, there was this particular judge, Judge Bob Nugent from the Supreme Court of Appeal, who withdrew his application. He also argues that there's this other professor of public law at the University of Cape Town. He also criticized the Judicial Service Commission regarding Hloppe as highly unsatisfactory, though he refrains from attributing his dissatisfaction to political motivations. According to the Financial Mail, Calder actually described the majority decision as bordering on the irrational. That's the majority decision in Parliament, for nomination of Judge Hloppe. And he actually said that process will create an ongoing uncertainty for both the Constitutional Court judges who alleged improper interference by Hloppe and also for Hloppe himself. This Professor Calder, now also Professor of Public Law, also points out that the Judicial Service Commission's ruling fails to resolve the numerous discrepancies in the evidence provided under oath by the judges, leaving unresolved questions about which accounts are accurate. Professor of Public Law Calder also expressed greater concern with the implications of the decision of the Judicial Service Commission's leadership than with the broader political influences affecting the ruling. Anyway, so these are kind of like the grievances by professors of public law, professor of the head of the Freedom Under Law, arguing that, Dr. John Hloppe's appointment might actually affect the future appointment of constitutional judges in the courts, and that, this whole arrangement of the rule of the majority in Parliament, or the nomination through the majority in Parliament, actually might not be the right one, and so probably Parliament may need to rework its policies and look into those positions, because Dr. John Hloppe's appointment and his nomination actually on the JSC had been as a result, as many of these professors claim, had been as a result of the fact that the Parliament didn't have stated rules or policies guiding the appointment of judges, and so John Hloppe's appointment just came kind of like through that sort of like lacuna, so to speak. But anyway, this is how far we'll go for this video. What do you guys think about Glynnis' speech here in the Parliament, and her frontal attack on Dr. Josh Hloppe in the Parliament? Share your thoughts in the comments.